She did not know what the mark meant when they told her it was a symbol. She did not know whose initials those were. She had been told it was a ritual, a sisterhood, a mark of commitment shared by women who had chosen to operate at the highest level of human potential.
She lay on a table in a room in upstate New York, and a cauterizing pen burned the initials of Keith Raniere into her skin.
Sarah Edmondson was a successful actress, a true believer, and one of the most effective recruiters the organization had ever produced. And she had just become the person who would bring the entire thing down.
This is the story of NXIVM, not a fringe group operating in the shadows, but a self-improvement organization with thousands of members across the United States, Canada, and Mexico.
Doctors, lawyers, actresses, heiresses, and executives paid tens of thousands of dollars to sit in its rooms. They climbed its ranks voluntarily. They recruited their friends, their colleagues, and their daughters. And the ones who climbed high enough discovered that the program had never been about self-improvement at all. It had always been about one man and what he required. Keith Raniere founded NXIVM in 1998 in Albany, New York. He called himself Vanguard. His followers used that name without irony. He claimed an IQ that placed him among the smartest human beings ever recorded. He claimed to have held 3 simultaneous world records. He claimed to have developed a technology, a suite of courses and exercises he called executive success programs, that could identify and dismantle the psychological patterns holding people back from their full potential. The pitch was sophisticated, the branding was polished, and the entry price was $12,000 for the first course alone. Thousands of people paid it. The structure of NXIVM was a ranking system called the Stripe Path. Members wore colored sashes indicating their level. They accrued points through attendance, recruitment, and demonstrated loyalty. They were encouraged to refer friends and family. Every new member generated revenue and expanded the network of people with a financial and psychological investment in the organization's legitimacy. The higher a member climbed, the more they had spent, the more they had recruited, and the more they had surrendered. Leaving meant acknowledging that everything they had been given to something false. Most people are not capable of making that admission. Raniere understood that before he built the first level of the system. Here is the part that reframes everything that follows. NXIVM was not a cult that gradually became something darker. The control architecture was present from the beginning and by design. Members were required to provide what the organization called collateral before advancing to higher levels. Collateral meant compromising material. Embarrassing personal disclosures, explicit photographs, and damaging information about family members. Members were told the collateral was a demonstration of trust and commitment. In practice, it was insurance. The further a member climbed, the more material Raniere held. The system did not escalate into blackmail. It was designed as blackmail by the foundation. Sarah Edmondson joined NXIVM in 2005.
She was a working actress based in Vancouver, and a friend introduced her to the executive success programs as a tool for professional and personal growth.
She found the early courses genuinely valuable. She rose through the ranks. She became one of the organization's most effective recruiters, eventually responsible for bringing more than 2,000 people into NXIVM over the course of a decade.
She believed in what she was doing. That is not a detail to move past quickly.
The most effective instrument of harm inside NXIVM was not coercion. It was conviction. The people doing the most damage to others were simultaneously the most committed believers in the system that was damaging them.
By 2015, Raniere had built a secret inner organization operating within NXIVM called DOS, a Latin acronym translating roughly to dominant over subordinate slaves. Every woman in DOS was required to provide collateral to her master before being admitted. They were required to be available to their master at all times.
They were required to maintain extreme caloric restriction, with some consuming fewer than 500 calories per day. They were required to recruit new slaves.
And the women at the very top of the DOS structure were slaves to Raniere himself. Most of them did not know his name was at the apex of the system when they entered it.
The branding began in 2017. Women in DOS were told they would receive a ritual mark as a symbol of their commitment to the sisterhood.
They were not told the mark would be permanent. They were not told it would be burned into their skin with a cauterizing pen. They were not told the symbol was a combination of Raniere's initials and those of Allison Mack, the actress who served as one of his top masters. Sarah Edmondson was branded in March of 2017. She later described lying on a table, holding the hands of women she trusted, being told to breathe through the pain for the sake of the sisterhood. When she saw the mark clearly for the first time and understood whose initials it contained, something broke. Within weeks, she had contacted the New York Times. The story she told journalist Barry Mayer was published in October 2017. It described the branding, the collateral, the caloric restriction, the sleep deprivation, and the master and slave structure of DOS in documented detail. The response was immediate. More women came forward. The New York Times published a second, deeper investigation. The Albany Times-Union had been reporting on Raniere's organization for years, and suddenly the national press was listening. Federal investigators had been monitoring NXIVM. Now they moved. This is the moment the story demands you ask a harder question. NXIVM was not a secret operation. It ran its programs openly in hotels and conference centers for nearly 20 years. Its members included the daughters of some of the wealthiest families in North America. The Bronfman sisters, heirs to the Seagram liquor fortune, contributed more than $150 million to Raniere's various ventures and legal defenses. Politicians attended its events. Celebrities participated in its courses. And yet, for 2 decades, no regulatory body, no law enforcement agency, and no journalist with institutional backing produced an investigation that reached Raniere. The local Albany press tried. They were met with lawsuits, private investigators, and legal harassment funded by Raniere's wealthy patrons. The system did not miss NXIVM. The system was used methodically and expensively to protect it. In March 2018, Keith Raniere was arrested in Mexico, where he had fled after the New York Times investigation. He was extradited to the United States and charged with sex trafficking, forced labor, racketeering, and conspiracy. Allison Mack was arrested weeks later. Several other senior members pleaded guilty.
Raniere's trial began in May 2019. Prosecutors presented testimony from DOS slaves, documentary evidence of the collateral system, and medical testimony about the branding. The jury convicted him on all 7 counts in less than 5 hours.
In October 2020, he was sentenced to 120 years in federal prison. He will die there. Sarah Edmondson testified at his trial. She had spent more than a decade recruiting people she cared about into a system she genuinely believed was helping them. Several of those people were also victimized by DOS. The weight of that is not a simple thing to assign. She did not know what the top of the ladder looked like as she climbed it. That is precisely what the architecture was designed to ensure. Her testimony helped put Raniere away for the rest of his life. Her branding scar is permanent. NXIVM did not exist in a vacuum. It existed inside a multi-billion-dollar global wellness and self-improvement industry that tells people every single day that the gap between who they are and who they could be is closable. That the right program, the right teacher, and the right level of commitment can unlock a version of themselves that is stronger, freer, and more powerful. That industry is not NXIVM, but it speaks the same language. It uses the same pressure points.
It identifies the same insecurities and offers the same promise. Raniere did not invent the pitch.
He simply followed it further than anyone expected and collected collateral along the way. The verdict found Keith Raniere guilty. It did not name the culture that made him credible. It did not address the thousands of members who were never charged, never classified as victims, and never given a framework for understanding what had happened to them. Some of them still defend him. Some of them are still in contact with each other through networks built within NXIVM that were never officially disbanded. The organization was destroyed. The belief system that powered it did not require the organization to survive. So the question worth sitting with is this. NXIVM had thousands of members across multiple countries for nearly 20 years, and the people who did the most damage to others were themselves among the most damaged. How many of them are still living by the rules Keith Raniere wrote and have never been told those rules were designed to serve him? And whether the line between perpetrator and victim was ever as clear as the verdict required it to be, and what we do with the ones the justice system placed on the wrong side of it. Someone always knows. The question is always whether the system around them is built to listen or built to protect itself. Coming up next on Crimes from the Shadows, we leave the townhouses of upstate New York and travel to one of the most consequential financial crimes in the history of the global economy.
One man, one firm, one decision
that erased 158 years of institutional history in a single weekend and sent the entire world into financial freefall. The collapse of Lehman Brothers is next.